This is Dawn Burke. I'm an HR consultant, and I'm next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
All right, welcome to RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. Our mission is to teach you about the new tools and tactics for finding talent online. Today's show is a recruiter edition. The RecTech podcast is sponsored by our friends, of course, at Work Here, hyperlocal candidate delivery system. You know, it's all about location recruiting. Well, the same is true in recruiting. All recruiting is local, as my friend John Sumser likes to say. And what Work Here does is they target candidates with GPS precision through their geofencing ad platform. You can reach more people who live closer to your office and help reduce those reduction in turnover rates from people who are commuting too far. What they do is they advertise your jobs on the screens candidates use the most on mobile phones. They target likely candidates who live near your locations with messaging that is delivered in the social and mobile apps they use most often. So it's your chance to connect with them on phones, tablets, desktops, and laptops right around a certain location that you target. So just head over to workhere.com. Tell them you heard it on RecTech because it's a really cool product and it'll definitely help you find more candidates on a local basis. All right, let's bring on today's guest. Dawn Burke's HR and leadership career has spanned the last 20 years, most recently serving as VP of People for Birmingham, Alabama-based technology company Daxko. Before that, she spent 10 years at one of the nation's largest direct mail organizations called MSpark, serving in a variety of HR leadership roles, including Director of Recruiting and Director of HR. Throughout her HR leadership career, she's led recruiting, training, and development, benefits, and employer relations functions. In addition, as a member of an executive leadership team, she has participated in making company-wide decisions, merger and acquisition strategies, and naturally, corporate people strategies. Dawn, welcome to RecTech. It's great to finally meet you.
I know. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm so glad to finally meet you as well. Certainly your reputation precedes you, and I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to our conversation today. I've known you online for many years, and so it's good to put a voice with the name. Perhaps one day we'll meet in real life again.
Yes.
I think I did see you at HR Tech, but I never had a chance to say hello. But
like two ships passing in the night.
Exactly.
HR Tech.
That's the problem with HR Tech.
It's one big melting pot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the problem with it too. It's so huge that I miss like half the people I want to end up seeing there. So it happens every year.
Right.
But, anyway, so tell me what's new in your world of HR consulting. What have you been up to lately, and also I'm curious what kind of projects you actually work on. So tell the listeners kind of what you do more.
Yeah. So after 20 years in corporate HR, and I was everything from HR administrative assistant to my last role was as an executive VP of People for a tech company. It was time to put my own shingle out and do some more focused work in some areas that I'm interested in. So I am the founder and advisor of the aptly named Dawn Burke HR LLC.
There you go.
It took me forever to come up with that name too, by the way. And my focus really is on teaching leaders more about modern HR, where we are today, teaching leaders what the modern employee how they're motivated, what their passions are, and how to keep them. And when I say modern employee, I don't mean millennials. I mean all of the generations that are working within the modern workplace, one in where employees have really been shaped by the freedoms they get on the internet. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I'm doing is I'm helping leaders and organizations understand that. And then create some retention strategies. Naturally, of course, if you talk about projects and those sorts of things, really where I'm seeing my clients really need help with is, first of all, leadership training, because they're leaders. I mean, that is something that I don't think will ever go away. But right now, the leadership bench is so small with a lot of companies, because they're moving so quickly, that they've realized, wow, we're growing and things have happened so quickly. We don't have a bench of leaders here. So a lot of leadership training, particularly on modern leadership. And then also helping people understand what their employees really value, AKA what their culture is. And then creating some strategies on how to engage them. So those are some of the things that I'm working on right now. And that, of course, then naturally gets into recruiting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Naturally.
You mentioned the retention strategy, which is interesting to me because this whole, theme of employee experience is really, getting some play in the recruiting circles these days. It just seems like that particular, facet of HR has been so long ignored among HR and leadership overall. I mean, it's great that it's finally, getting the light of day here. Is it actually making any progress inside these companies, though?
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of times companies have to, walk before they run. Mm-hmm. And I think what I'm finding is a lot of organizations absolutely believe in the concepts of engaging employees. They want to be workplaces of choice. They do want that. It just hasn't been something that's been top of mind for them because, some of them have thought, well, my employees are engaged. Well, a lot of them aren't. Let's look at your turnover. Oh, maybe they aren't so engaged. Other ones just haven't thought of it as a strategy. They've looked at it more as an event. Mm-hmm. So some of it really has been people wanting to create engaging workplaces, but not really knowing what it is. And then the biggest issue, though, when we talk about employee experiences or creating those positive experiences, engagement experiences, is a lot of folks don't even do the work to know what is it that really is valued in the organization. So the thing that's interesting about all this is it doesn't take a whole lot to figure that out. And so when I say walk before you run, the fact that CEOs are talking about it is huge because now that it's on their radar, now they can do something about it. And I think what they find is that it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to get a positive ROI. Still got a lot of work to do, though. There's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I think one of the ways. Sorry, I was going to say one of the ways.
Go ahead.
One of the ways they could do that is through the onboarding experience, right? That's something that doesn't take a whole lot of money to fix if you're doing it wrong today. I think. I spoke to one guy. I forget his name. It was a company on the West Coast. It was a music company, and they just went out and they created this, week-long onboarding process. They went and they watched a movie. They had some bonding experiences. They created a buddy system, things like that. I mean, that just takes a little bit of effort. It doesn't take any money to do this stuff.
Not much.
And I think
oh no, Chris, I'm just so excited. I can't. Awesome. Yeah, keep going. I love what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think it doesn't cost any money, and if someone actually took the time to, I could just put some thought into it, you could really develop a great company. I think overall, just by caring about your employees as soon as they walk in the door.
Yeah, and it's sad to think that businesses got so far away from that concept that they're not actually over the last years had to be like a movement toward that. Yeah. And again, a movement. I mean, literally, we really have to create this thing called employee engagement. And I am going to throw them a bone. It's hard to do with some of them, frankly, Chris, but most of them, it isn't that they don't want those things in their organizations. But what we've seen now, what I've seen with my clients, and when I do a lot of speaking across the country. Right now, we're in this merger and acquisition era in the United States and in the world. Companies, in order to grow, really are buying other companies. And executives, if they are in a merger and acquisition strategy, they don't have time to go eat lunch, let alone think about how you're going to keep your employees engaged. Yeah. So a lot of the times, the desire just isn't matching the time or effort. So what's great about this podcast and the work that I do is telling people that, it is huge. And guess what? It takes just some effort and some focus to make some big strides. And I'm going to give you the number one thing. This is breaking news here on RecTech.
There you go.
The best way to engage your employees is for leaders to have one-on-one meetings with them. 5 minutes a week. Boom. There you go. Anything that you can do to help build trust builds engagement. And that starts not only with onboarding, it starts with recruiting.
That's a great
recruiting is where it starts.
That's a great no-cost way to do that. And
absolutely.
I wanted to ask about technology and recruiting bias. That's in the news a lot lately in terms of that. Are your clients talking about that at all? How do you view technology and how, this whole diversity thing now? I mean, I think overall, Dawn, I've never heard the word HR mentioned so much in the past year, I think. I think it's because of the Me Too movement and, all this diversity stuff coming out now. I mean, HR is definitely getting the light shined on it more than ever, I think. And tell me more about how you see this kind of stuff evolving.
Well, I think what's interesting is the light is being shined on it more than it has in a long time, because now we're starting to see what I've heard somebody called the power of the coalition. Things that are happening outside of organizations, out in the world, are now impacting the way that organizations need to recruit and treat their employees in a much more, bigger focus on diversity and inclusion. Just go ahead and throw a dart at a newspaper, if any of y'all still get newspapers, and you're going to see some insane story about somebody being excluded in the world. Usually will have social implications or perhaps political implications. And companies like Amazon, for instance, and Google, I mean, employees are walking out because they aren't liking the way practices internally are happening. And these are juggernaut companies that usually do have the time and resources to put into diversity initiatives. This is more about what modern workers expect, what modern workers want. They're very educated on these things that are happening outside of their offices, and they're expecting for these changes to happen internally. So then, of course, that gets into, recruiting. And this is all happening at the same time as HR and recruiting technology is just exploding. Yeah. I mean, it's been exploding. Would you agree, Chris? I mean, it's been exploding for 5 years. I mean, it's been around for 20, but the last 5 years, it's just like, boom, as far as so many platforms. I mean, what do you think on that?
Well, yeah, I say today that there's never been more HR technology than exists right now, and it's only getting worse. My question is, who's using all this stuff? Because the average HR department does not have the internal resources to implement half the stuff that's out there. And what they do have already, they're using it incorrectly for the most part overall. That's what I've seen. So you're right. I think I thought there's been an HR tech bubble for a year or so now, at least, in terms of who's buying all this stuff. Because I just don't see it in action at all when I'm out there.
It's interesting. I do, again, when I speak across the country, because I've been out of corporate HR now for about a year and a half. And the number one thing, so I spend a lot of time speaking, go to HR conferences and write and whatnot. And I usually always ask the audience, what's keeping you up at night, or where do you have the most questions? Always comes to technology. Always comes back to technology. So I agree with you. We read a lot about the big enterprise companies. This is what Google's doing. This is what Amazon's doing. This is what Facebook is doing. But most of us aren't Google, Amazon, or Facebook.
Right.
We're small, medium, I came from the small and medium business world. And I consider that up to 2,000 people. Some might say as high as 5,000, but I think that's even much bigger than the demographic I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them right now, they're just implementing kind of their first HRM system. And so when you say, who's using it, I do see people using it. I just see them using it incorrectly because most of them don't know what they're trying to solve with the technology. They know they need something cool. They know they need something to help with efficiencies, but they really don't know what problem they're solving. However, can technology end recruiting bias? I think that's, one of the things that you were alluding to. Mm-hmm. I think that technology absolutely cannot end recruiting bias. It can't. Unless you absolutely positively can scrub any human interaction with any of the process, there's going to be an element of bias in your recruiting. And, and when I say any human interaction, I mean from who's written the job description. Is the computer going to write the job description? Probably not. But if there's a human being writing the job description, if it's a human being that's probably making the qualifiers as far as the qualifiers for the job, if any human being is going to be part of an interview process, and if a human being is going to be, let's flip the script. If a human being, let's say we want for the computer, that artificial intelligence within our technology to make the decision for us, well, if a human being is actually going to be programming that computer to make the right decisions based on X, Y, and Z factors or algorithms, there's going to be some bias.
Yeah. And I think
that's my long answer for a short
Yeah, no, I think what technology is going to do is tell you that you're biased, so that you can then go change whatever that process is that got you there. I guess. I guess that's the way I look at it.
Right.
I was.
But I guess what's interesting though, Chris, is that I don't think all bias is bad.
No, I don't either.
I mean, so talk to me about that. I think you've got more interesting things to say than I do.
Yeah, if you know that a certain job mostly attracts men, you're probably going to recruit mostly men in that role, right? Things like that. Like there was this whole thing about there was some controversy last year about the Facebook recruiting ads on how they were targeting certain individuals. I just thought that as a marketer, I'm looking at the data here, and the data says I hire, it's mostly guys who apply for this particular job, whatever that job is. I'm going to probably target them in my advertising to find more of them. I guess that's one example, right? There's an article actually I wrote about today, a survey, getting back to this technology thing in HR. It says HR departments among the least digitally advanced, says the new survey. So let me just read some of this to you. A new study based on a survey of more than 600 executive recruiters and leadership advisors worldwide reveals that HR departments are significantly behind other functional departments when it comes to digital transformation. This functional gap within organizations across industries and geographies is creating major barriers to enterprise-wide digital transformations. So my answer to that is I think we need a new role inside of HR, the director of HR IT, right? A position that uses technology correctly, because it's something that's a role that's missing right now in HR, I think. And because of the way technology is moving, the speed at which it's moving right now inside of HR and recruiting, I just think there's no way you can get around that role. I think it has to be there. At the very least, you should be bringing in your IT people to help you with these projects overall. So they speak tech, right? You need someone who speaks tech in order to implement a lot of these new HR recruiting technologies out there overall. But I digress.
No, I don't think you digress. I think it's hugely important. I was fortunate that my last 7 years in corporate HR was working for a technology company. And the irony of it, though, is since it was still a company that just like any smaller company that's starting to grow, the HR technology wasn't great. I mean, the system of record for a while when I first got there was really the payroll system. The fortunate thing, though, is that I was part of an executive team where we understood the importance of technology and knew when it was time for us to invest in HR technology. So I had to have demoed and implemented. I demoed so many different platforms, and I had the fortune. It was these were never great experiences, but I had the good fortune to go through several implementation processes. So I know more than the average bear about HR technology, but I also, because of the kind of work I do and the support I had in my organization, was able to prioritize that strategically and time-wise to do it. And a lot of HR pros, because many teams do run lean, don't have that time. They don't have the time to reskill or learn, or they don't have the budget to go to the HR technology conference.
Yeah.
And if that indeed is the pragmatic reality of your role as an HR practitioner, that you cannot be the expert in technology, then you have no choice. You need to either get IT to partner, which I still don't think that's the solve, but it's better than nothing. You need to hire a consultant to come in and do some vetting for you and make a decision. Or you have to find a way to make this a new priority. Because the HR practitioner of the future, no doubt, has to be the HR technology expert. There's just no doubt. And that's, like you said, I heard somebody say that they should start having titles in HR like a role that's the director of innovation, where understanding the technology piece would be a big part of that job.
Yeah.
And others say this shouldn't just be an HR thing. HR technology is workforce technology. It doesn't just help HR; it helps the workforce. Right. So perhaps it needs to be something outside of HR.
That's an interesting perspective as well. I think you're right there. The workforce overall should be kind of be the umbrella for all this stuff. I think you're right there. You mentioned HR departments are lean. That's the other problem, right? I think leadership is still, looking at HR as this cost center and not really which it is in a sense, but it's also they need resources to make this stuff happen, right? I mean, are they? Do you tell them to give HR more resources in terms of manpower?
You could tell them that, but I wouldn't hold your breath on actually getting it.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting, there was actually a Deloitte survey. I think it was in their Human Capital Trends report. It might have been 2016, where they surveyed, of course, a bazillion people, and they had a bunch of executives, not just HR, but C-suite executives that were surveyed as well. And one of the questions was something along the lines of, what are the things that are keeping you up at night, or what are the most strategic things you're going to be looking at next year? And I got to tell you, Chris, the top 5 were all HR-y kind of things. Developing leaders, recruiting top talent, understanding engagement, redesigning our workforce. I mean, it was just like I couldn't have written the script better. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all HR type things. Then another question was to the executive, to the CEOs in particular. It was, of the departments that report to you, where do you prioritize your time? I mean, I don't remember the order, but it was something along the lines of finance, marketing, research and development, sales, customer support, HR. And so there's just this inconsistency between priorities and the people that can actually do it. And I don't necessarily, again, I'm going to throw CEOs a bone. A lot of the times, again, if you're beholden to a board or you're in growth mode, you're going to prioritize finance. But it doesn't work anymore. And I think where you're going to see departments remain the only way that departments can still remain lean is by getting much better with the technology play.
Yeah.
But even that will outgrow. So again, as an HR pro, I think the department shouldn't be this lean. But until we're able to have a seismic shift in the way that executives redefine what work should be and how people should be treated at work, you're probably going to have leaner HR departments. You'll still have a CFO that calls it a cost center, just is what it is. And you got to be a little more savvy on how you can use technology to clear up a lot of your nonsense work.
Yeah. It's funny. My last corporate job, we had no HR department. It was like a 1,000-person company. Family run.
You had no HR department?
Yeah, we had no HR department. So we had recruiters.
Wow.
And I was director of digital recruiting, but we had no HR department. Like the HRS was run by the finance department, basically. It was
well,
I don't know how. I guess they got away with it because they didn't want to pay anybody in HR, I guess.
Right. Well, I think, but you bring up a good point, and this is.
But
not
I will tell you that company,
failure.
Sorry to interrupt. That company was a horrible place to work.
Okay. There you go.
So
it's all relative, I guess. But I think what you've just described, I think hopefully that type of atmosphere, that type of workplace is starting to dwindle down some as far as people understanding, no, I need some kind of HR.
Yeah.
But I still think that we're stuck more in the HR is the compliance officer, and that simply isn't going to work anymore. It doesn't work with modern employees. The HR function has to be more than compliance. Hell, you have attorneys who can handle compliance. Hell, now you have computers that can handle your compliance issues. You have vendors that can handle your brokers. They can handle compliance. But the HR pro right now, who is actually going to be valued now and in the future, is going to be people who are in the business of connecting, understanding purpose, understanding organizational design. And they're going to be people who are more subject matter experts than teachers, than policemen. And for HR pros that like that role of being the policeman, well, I think you're going to have two choices. One, only go work for huge companies that really have like a compliance division. And that's cool. Employee relations, compliance. Right on. You do that. Or get the hell out of HR. It's just get out of it. Go do something else because that's not the future of HR.
Well, that's a good note to break on. So let me talk to you today about our other sponsor, listeners, Emissary.ai, brand new to the podcast, the text recruiting platform. They have a number of ways to embed texting into your recruiting. One of those is pretty cool. It's share by text. So what this does is It helps to boost the number and quality of referrals instantly on your job listings. So they have a share by text icon that sits in your job listings themselves. When someone clicks on it, they enter their phone number, and Emissary then sends them a reminder text with a link so they can come back later to apply. It's a great way to really improve that mobile experience for your candidates and make sure that they come back to the job when they have some time to apply. So go to emissary.ai for more information, and make sure you told them you heard it on RecTech. So Dawn, let's talk about a little more technology if you could. First of all, have you I know you went to HR Tech this year. There were a lot of HR Tech chatbots coming up. I think one of those was called Jane.ai, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And it really helped you. It was kind of like a virtual HR person, if you will, in HR chatbot format. Have you worked with any clients yet to implement some of those things, or have you seen that in action at all? I'm curious what your overall thoughts on the technology itself are.
Yeah, no. Well, I have not worked with any clients where I've helped them implement this, but I have seen some in action. I've seen some chatbots in action as a person who is going to different HR sites or HR vendor sites. And certainly I've seen demonstrations of some larger platforms that have chatbots. I got to tell you, I don't think it's a bad thing. In some regards. Now, if you talk, I'm sure clearly John Sumner.
Yep.
He can, and William Timcup and others. I mean, they can dig really deep into the efficacy of and the pitfalls of chatbots. However, if you are going to be using chatbots, in my opinion, again, I like the walk before you run. I think that chatbots can help with some of that basic minutia of answering certain questions it's easy. It'd be easy for somebody to get HR questions electronically, and it'd be more efficient and more quick using a chatbot. I think that really it can be really a boon. The problem again is if you're going to implement it, be sure that you've thought through the culture of your company. Is that something that your company really is ready for? Think about how much handholding your customers like or need. If it's a chatbot for customers externally, but it's here. So I think people need to learn about it and find ways to embrace some of these technologies that are coming into play.
Yeah, I think it's great for those FAQs, those frequently asked questions and problems that employees may have. I think it's a perfect use case for a chatbot like that overall. You've seen some. Oh yeah. Yeah, you've seen some. When it comes to recruiting, though, I think you've seen a little bit more of a controversy there in terms of. I think chatbots are better for the high volume stuff versus the low volume stuff that high level type candidates. I don't think it's there yet, but definitely for the high level stuff, there's some pre-screening things you can do with it. But yeah, there are certain use cases for it, and I think you were right to mention start slow. Don't go full bore into these things. Start out with small stuff and work your way up from there. It's kind of how you can approach HR technology overall. But
absolutely.
What else did you see at HR Tech that caught your eye in terms of employee engagement, things like that? Anything that you want to mention?
It's really interesting. I love the HR Technology Conference, and it's something that I think people should go to regularly, particularly if you want to be that knowledge expert. The future of HR, you got to know the technology pieces. But what's interesting is that I did not see anything ultra sexy new revealed at HR Tech. I don't know if that was your experience, and that's not a bad thing. What I'm just seeing is better functionality. You're seeing more evolutions of how HR technology can help you with the data pieces. I'm seeing a demystification of the term AI. AI is not scary. AI, artificial intelligence, and your technology isn't going to take away your job necessarily. But I do think that there's been there's one area that I think has been interesting as far as maybe this technology has turned over a leaf into actually being utilized. It's going to be your text recruiting platforms. And to me, when the big boys like an iCIMS, a JobVite, some of these larger recruiting platforms or human capital management platforms start buying certain companies and adding it to their platforms, in this case, these companies have purchased different text recruiting instruments.
Yeah, iCIMS bought Text Recruit last year.
Okay, there you go. That's when I think then you're going to start seeing it get implemented more to the masses. And so I'm interested to see how that plays out. I know with the new generation of worker, it'll probably play out very well, unless people start getting inundated, just like they are now with emails. If it starts getting abused, and lots of text recruiting spam is popping up everywhere. Unless that happens, then I think text recruiting is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too. I do think we are going to head for text spam. That's coming. It's got to be coming. I mean, it's going to happen.
It's got to
happen to email. It's going to happen to text too at some point. But hopefully, it's many years away from that standpoint.
I hope so, because then it'll fail. I mean, it won't work.
Yeah.
Unless there's ways to opt into it, or I think it's going to be almost like talent communities are right now on email. It's just going to happen with text. And right now, because people haven't been inundated with it, I heard a statistic that said something along the lines of texts are usually read within 2 minutes, whereas emails a lot of times are never read.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So interesting.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, you kind of hit on it before when I was going to ask you about the HR Pro of the future, and you told them, and you mentioned that they have to be very tech savvy. But give me go a little bit further on that. Describe that person 5 years from now. Who is the HR Pro out there? How would you describe that person?
Well, I think in 5 years, the HR Pro definitely has to be tech savvy. Actually, the HR Pro now needs to start being tech savvy, but definitely 5 years from now. I think the HR Pro is going to switch their value proposition from being a doer to being a teacher. They're going to be, the knowledge, we're in the knowledge worker era right now. So it's going to be less about administration, more about teaching, understanding, and decentralizing your skill set within the HR department to all of the leaders of the organization. So your role is going to be teaching the hiring managers how to be the best damn recruiters. Your role is going to be to teach the hiring managers or the leaders how to have the best performance reviews and give continuous feedback. And our role is going to be the ones who are going to be the expert on the technology, the strategy in those areas, and teach others to do it. HR Pro of the future has to be Agile. That's not a buzzword. It just is. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to be able to understand that a lot of your job is reactive. You can strategize all you want to be proactive, and you need to, but you're going to have to be able to switch your gears very quickly and not go through a lot of grief every time there's change. And then I think last but certainly not least, I could list 14 other ones. They're going to be connectors. They're going to be the ones that are connect the engagement piece to the strategy. They're going to be the ones who are going to understand and be able to communicate and storytell in a way that's compelling to employees, to boards, to C-suite, to customers, why what you do is important and how to connect your passion and purpose to that of the company and to that of the customer. So those are just a few things that I think is going to be the HR of the future. It's not going to be compliance. It's not going to be legalities. I sure hope it's not. Sure hope it's not.
Yeah, I agree. And this has been a great conversation, Dawn. I think I learned a lot. I hope the listeners did too. You're fun to talk to, and definitely want to have you back at some point next year.
Great, thank you.
Certainly appreciate the talk today. Tell the listeners how to connect with you. Where can they find you online?
All right. Well, you can find me on all social media platforms except Snapchat. I still haven't gotten into the Snapchat, but one day. I tried, guys. I mean, I tried too. 6-year-old niece can do it, and I'm gonna have to talk to my 6-year-old niece again.
There's just too many now. There's too many platforms now. We don't need any more.
Okay, for now, I will say I'm on LinkedIn, so look up Dawn Burke. Certainly on Facebook, Dawn Burke, and Twitter at Dawn. Oh my gosh, what's my Twitter handle? I think here. Hold on, folks.
All right.
Hold on. At Dawn H. Burke. Okay, at Dawn H. Burke is my Twitter handle.
There you go.
And then my Instagram handle is at DH Burke. Oh, I need to have a marketing pro who can consolidate all this.
I know, right?
I know. And then you can see where I'm speaking, what different webinars, et cetera, I'm doing on my website, which is dawnburkehr.com.
Awesome. You do a lot of blogging there too, right?
Yeah, so thank you. I blog for a great multi-contributor blog called Fistful of Talent.
Okay.
I also have my own blog, dawnhburke.com, and you can get that on my website. And then just Google me. I do a lot of different content pieces for a lot of tech vendors as well. So.
Well, we'll link to all that in the show notes, Dawn. Really appreciate you joining me today, and thanks very much for the great conversation.
Oh, my gosh, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate it more than you know.
All right, well, that will do it for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors, Work Here and Emissary. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an iTunes subscriber, be sure to leave a review, and I'll thank you on air. Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, always be recruiting.
Another episode of RecTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RecTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RecTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.